That's the title that Jeff Kinney from the Village Church made me put on his talk. I forgot to change it back. Anyway, okay. Before I get to that talk, I want to tell you briefly this fun story because you can tell, can't you? In kindergarten, my favorite day was show and tell. Can you tell that? It's a great day. Get to share, my new fire engine or something. Anyway, got to go to Hawaii for our 25th wedding anniversary. Took my wife. Points. Yes. Taking my wife to Hawaii. Okay, good. And then one day, this is a big island, I told her I'd like to go see where the lava's coming out. And okay, she knows me. So we drove around to the place where the lava had, sometime before, covered the highway, had to park and get out, and went over to a kiosk where a ranger woman was, park ranger. This is a national park. I said, is it possible for me to go up to the side of the hill where lava is coming out right now? What did I expect? No, Instead, she just brightens up and says, why, sure. Just be careful. It's right up there. I think Hawaiians think it's a little less scary than those of us living on the mainland. Anyway, so I said, thank you. So I go off and walking over these old lava flows, over and over. 100 of these old things. They get up to where you could see a heat signature because it's hard to see in the daytime. See in the nighttime, no problem. See where it's coming out now. Finally got up to where it was coming out. There was another guy there, which is good because he took a picture for me to prove. Yeah, anyway, so the day before, I'd bought a metal cup like this thinking, I'm just going to go up and scoop a little lava out.
Oh, right.
I know it's hot, but I'll just be really careful. Okay, that stuff you hear about being really hot is really true. 2,000 degrees. Take the highest setting on your oven times about 3.5. It's very hot. I totally get the Daniel fiery furnace story, no question now. So I'm there, and I did have a long stick, walking stick that I picked up on the way. So I'm thinking, okay, what am I going to do? I can't get any closer than let's say, from here to this microphone. That's as close as I could get. There's no, boy, I'm feeling it right now, Okay, what am I going to do? Okay, so I put the metal cup on a rock, and then I take my long stick, and I say, I'm just going to see if I can get some lava to stick to the stick. So I'm poking around in the lava. Catches on fire, drops. Catches on fire, drops. Catches on fire. Oh, whoa. Okay, there's a little bit. And then I put it into the cup and pushed it down and had my water with me. And I poured the water in there and there's my illegally collected lava from a national park. Said, no, someday, I don't think they're going to miss it. I really don't think so. Someday, I'm going to take off a piece of this and send it into a laboratory and say, can you date this for me? Because I was there the day it began. That was the day when the clock started. So I just want to see that. The problem is most labs are up to, where did you get this? How old do you think it is? So I didn't want to be embarrassed. I get it. But I still think it'd be kind of fun to find out. So how cool is that? I mean, every guy, right, gentlemen, would love to play in lava. I've been lucky. Okay, so I probably ought to get the advancer and let's go. Let's talk about the flood, okay? And I have a question, especially I want to address to you grandma types, because I've already got a bone to pick with you on this subject. Okay? How many of you have depicted the flood in the Ark story with some little cute toy, some puzzle, some coloring book, some toy of some kind where it's showing the animals and Noah just, wee, the beautiful sunny, I know. Because if you're trying to tell your children that God will preserve them through the hardest times, if this is the way God takes care of me, okay, I'll give you a a light pass. But understand the flood was the worst event the universe has ever seen, save maybe Calvary. It was a devastating story. The whole world, billions of animals, don't know how many people, millions of people, died in a most tragic and horrific way. It was not a happy, sunny event for anybody on the ark either, let alone, as the people knew what was going on outside, it would have been a horrible thing to go through. Just so you know. And the other thing about those kind of depictions is they look a little fairy tale to me. And, and it wasn't a fairy tale. In fact, and I've already said it's because of violence, so I'll pass on this for time's sake. You can go to see the ark today. Did you know that? You can find it. There it is. This is in northern Kentucky. You got to go. It's worth it. You put it on your bucket list. I know northern Kentucky's on the top of everybody's vacation list, but you got to go. It really is amazing. It's a full size, largest wooden structure in the world, $100 million to build. And if any of you guys ever work in wood shops on wood, with wood, you would love to look at what they did here, because they tried to use old methods of carving the wood. Of course, you had to put in bathrooms and lights and everything, but as far as trying to be original, they did a good job. This is opening day some summers ago, and it's definitely worth a one-timer. I thought I had a picture. I don't have a picture. Okay. I'm going to say this about finding a real ark, just briefly. Wherever you go in Adventist churches, there's always been these stories about looking for and finding the ark almost, or pretty close, or maybe. And this has followed us for a long time. Conservative churches, Adventists and others, have had these stories. Now that things are... How many of you remember the Cold War? Some of you remember the Cold War? Remember when we were worried about the Russians? I was in Los Angeles in elementary school, and we'd have air raid sirens, air raid drills. Get under the table, because if the Russians drop an atomic bomb, you'll be safe there. So we learned that, right? We were worried about the Russians. Guess what? It used to be that the Turks were worried about the Russians as well during the Cold War, and the Mount Ararat is real close to the Russian border. And so they weren't excited about kind of lighthearted people traipsing around the Ararat looking for the ark, when they could easily go over the border or get too close to the border and cause an incident with Russia. And so they kind of had a tendency to be a little shy on letting people look for the ark. Now, whenever a government does that, tries to keep you from something, what do people typically think? Yeah, it's got to be that. Where are they hiding? What's this Muslim country hiding from us Christians or something, So it's been kind of that's been added to the mix. But now the Turks are no Cold War, the Turks are very happy to have American groups come over and spend dollars over there. And they've got Ark visitor centers there, and it's no problem. Now, whatever you think about climate change or global warming or any of that stuff, there's no question that we're losing ice and snow at some of the mountains, and Ararat's one of them. And so it's slowly but surely revealing pretty much all of it. And I mean, we've got satellite imagery now that can tell you what newspaper you're reading, the accuracy of these pictures. And so we have had lots of opportunity to really, really find it. The most conservative Christian creationist groups that I have seen that have written about this have said they have concluded the ark is not there. Now, I know you've heard stories, and I know they're all that kind of, got that intriguing sort of, they're hiding it or something, but if the ark is there, you should be able to just go right up to it and just touch the thing if it's really there. And so I'm a little skeptical on these almost, it's kind of like, well, I won't go there, but there's a lot of these kind of stories out there. So I believe that, I have a theory about what happened to the ark, and it's a really good theory because you can't disprove it. And here it is. I think Noah and his family, when he got off the ark, they looked around. I don't see any Home Depot or Lowe's around here. I don't see Walmarts. I don't see forests. I don't see anything to build with. Oh, yes, I do. And I think they disassembled the ark and used the material for other things. That just makes sense to me. That's what the ancient people did. I can show you evidence of that. So anyway, that's now there may be somebody here with a story that they really feel, but they went up every gorge that the story supposedly said it's up that gorge. They went up that gorge. Supposedly over this general area. They looked in that general area. So just so you know, the boat-shaped rock formation has been looked at very carefully, and it's a rock formation with a couple of unusual things about it, but it's a rock formation, not a preserved ark. Okay, having said all that, I don't need that to prove the flood. Don't need it at all, because I got some other stuff, like flood stories. Take a look at this. We got the biblical story, but guess what? The Babylonians, the Egyptians, the Persians, the Assyrians, these guys all had flood stories. Let's go over to Europe. The Romans, the Greeks even had the date very close to the biblical date. Germans, let's keep going. How about to Africa? These tribes pre-missionary contact had stories, including even the pygmy. Go to Asia, and the Siberians, the Russians, the Mongolians, all of these people, you've heard about the Chinese characters showing up in some of the early words. Let's go to South Pacific, Australia. Now that would be the Aborigines, the Maori, even the Hawaiians have a flood story. Let's keep going to the Americas and some of the early and some of the late, like Inca and Toltec, as well as, even Eskimos have a flood story. Now I went to, you may know in the Smithsonian Institution, the collection of museums in D.C., Smithsonian has actually one for Native American history. I don't know if you knew that. It's kind of, people don't know about it. But there is one there. And I went there, and I was going up to the top, which is where the oldest things were, and I was looking in the cases, and along came a Native American woman guide with a tour group. And so she's showing them things in the cases, and she's talking to them, and she says to them, she says, my people, talking about her tribe, my people have a flood story. You people do too, right? And then she said, maybe there's something to it. And I thought, in the Smithsonian, that's a way to go. Way to go. Only a Native American could get away with that. But anyway, yeah, maybe there's something to it. With all these stories, there's not ancient memories of earthquakes. There's not ancient memories of forest fires or hurricanes. Or all of these devastating stories are consistent with something like this. The gods were angry with man and decided to destroy man with a giant flood. But there was somebody, some rascal, somehow or other evaded the consequences. And from them, the world was repopulated. Now, the big difference, there's similarities, yes. But the big difference is the Hebrew story, which has God providing a way of safety for those who want to escape the flood. God is the one that provided floating material in that sense. So that's the difference. Now, the earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. The Spirit of God was covering over the face of the waters. We got a lot of water here. We've got a lot of water. If you smoothed off all the mountains of the earth, made it as round as a marble, we'd have 5,000 feet of water covering the planet. Plenty of water. In fact, there's lots of water down there, too. A few years ago, there was a little bit of an unofficial contest between the West and the East as to who could dig the deepest drill into the earth to try to get down as close to the core as they could. The Russians won. They got to about 48,000 feet deep, and you know what they found down there that they were absolutely not expecting? Water. 48,000 feet down. Okay, anyway, water. We got lots of water. And when it says that on that day the fountains of the great deep were broken up, describing what happened in history, that was the standard understanding of the Western science for centuries. When I'm looking at the mountains and the valleys and the canyons, those are all remnants of the last events of the flood. They were somehow affected by the flood. Well, that's what it was until something happened in the West a couple of hundred years ago to all of our universities, especially in Europe. And that was a rise of secular humanism, which is a nice way of saying atheism, frankly. and the decline of Christianity in Europe. And today it would be accurate to say Europe is post-Christian. Post-Christian. I'll leave it to you to decide how America is going. But anyway, the rise of secular humanism took over the branches of knowledge in the various fields in the universities and absolutely took over science. And frankly, religion too, to some extent. When Darwin was in school in Cambridge, and we're talking about the 1820s, already there was only one of his teachers that believed in the historicity of Genesis. All the others took it some other way, some symbolic sort of way. So it was a rise of secular humanism. The age of reason, you've heard that, right? You have James Hudson, the father of modern geology, proposing, and these in the late 1700s, uniformitarianism, which kind of sounds like a church. I'm a member of the first church of uniformitarianism, you know? But actually what that is it's a theory that the Earth's surface has been altered only by currently observable processes. It was definitely a reaction against the biblical flood. So he's pushing back. I remember Darwin writing and saying to one of his colleagues that we've got to get Moses out of science, basically. So it's another way of saying getting rid of God. So not by a flood, uniformitarianism. Let me tell you what that means. For instance, uniform rates. Go to the Grand Canyon. Go to the Colorado River there in the Grand Canyon. Go to the mouth or the exit of the canyon. See how much dirt comes out in 1 year. Okay, you got that measured? How much dirt is missing in the canyon? Do the math. That's how old the canyon is. End of story. And I mean, we don't have to go anywhere further than that. The rates have always been the same. Now, okay, incidentally, that subject, that idea of rates always staying the same affects everything in science on the subject of origins. Dating, tree rings, ice sheets, everything. It's got to be the same rate as today. So, okay, example, yep. Now, that became the standard understanding until a guy by the name of J. Harlan Bretz of UW came along. I did this talk across the street in Pullman. I used to pastor the Pullman Moscow district. And across the street from Pullman, Washington State, Cougs, go Cougs. I'm sorry, this was a Husky that came up with this. UW, geologist, came up with a theory as he went over to Dry Falls. Anybody here ever been over to Dry Falls? North central kind of Washington, Grand Coulee area. He went to this place right here, and I know there's water down here, but there's nothing coming over the edge. He says, this looks like, Dry Falls looks like Niagara Falls with the water turned off. How can that be? Because nothing happens in the past that's not going on now. Consistent rates. So, but it sure looks like something happened in the past here. So he brought his idea to the geologists of America, and they say, we're not into floods, thank you very much. And okay, you're going to need more evidence than that. Besides, where'd the water come from? So we went up the Clark Fork River to a place called Missoula, Montana. And if you go to Missoula, Montana today, you can see these shorelines around the tops of around the hillsides, all around Missoula. And so what Harlan Bretz came up with was, at some point in the Ice Age, and incidentally we believe in an Ice Age, creationists do, during the Ice Age there was somehow an ice dam across the Clark Fork River, and it backed water up into what's today Missoula. And so much water backed up to where it was a lake the size of Lake Erie. And then at some point, it broke through the ice dam and emptied out in a matter of 1 to 2 days. Can you imagine the force of the water? The power and the volume of the water was unreal, and came through this part of Washington and top of Oregon, and carved out the Colorado River Gorge a bit wider than before. But anyway, it came right through Spokane, Washington. I used to live in Spokane, and we lived on the side of a hill, and when we tried to plant plants in the ground, there'd be these round river rocks all over the place, and there's no river or creek around here. Where's these round rocks from? From the Missoula flood. It came right through Spokane. rolled a bunch of rocks. So he got all this evidence together. He even took pictures of giant ripple marks from a plane, gathered all this information, and presented it to the geologists of America. 40 years trying. Finally, he got some of them to go to Dry Falls and take a look for themselves. And he contacted Harlan with this comment. Okay, Harlan, we're now catastrophists like you. We agree. Something happened in the past here. So he was still alive. That's good. He was an old man, but he was still alive. And that's cool. You know what he said after all this was done? He said, you know what? We now need to look at the Grand Canyon. We need to look at the Grand Canyon as something that was formed quickly, rapidly. All right, looking at this group, some of you can remember where you were maybe. On May 18, 1980, some of you, anyway, where were you when Mount St. Helens lost 1,300 feet in a couple of seconds? As you can tell, I love volcanoes. So, or to study, not what they do to people, but I love to study volcanoes as a natural thing. I want you to think of volcanoes as a couple of ways right now. First of all, they're just a bump in the ground. They're just something underneath trying to get out, whether it's gas or liquid or whatever, trying to get out. So as this bump comes up, there's two kinds of volcanoes in terms of their tops. One can have a top that has cracks in it. And so as lava or something's trying to get out, in this case lava, trying to get out, oh, it's easy. Just come right out that crack, right? Come on out. And that's what Hawaii is. Hawaii has those kind of eruptions. Just flows out into the ocean and makes more Hawaii. So that's a good thing. Anyway, but there's others where the cap is a cork. There's nothing giving way, no cracks. That's what Mount St. Helens was. So as Mount St. Helens was being deformed by, this case, it's gas trying to get out. Gas is pushing the north face like this out, up. And as it's doing that, 5 feet a day toward the end, it had a little earthquake and it caused this side to just break free and slide down. When it did that, that was a cork off the bottle. And take a look at these pictures right here. So can you see in this upper left, that's the top. That used to be up here. Now it's sliding down. This is a north face. It's sliding down. Because it's sliding down, that's releasing the pressure. The cork is off the bottle and boom, out it all comes. Something like 57 people died in this, and about 7 of them, 6 or 7, were in considered dangerous area. They were scientists studying with permission closer. But the other, almost 50, were in safe areas. And they were in safe areas and still killed because the eruption was many times larger than they thought it was going to be. So the power of this eruption. Now, what's interesting is, and why does this all matter for catastrophe and floods? We found out that you could make a little Grand Canyon very quickly. This is a little Grand Canyon, North Fork of the Toutle River. And take a look at these rock layers here and over here. Those rock layers were laid down by the eruption. They're actually graded beds in terms of size of the pebbles and everything. And they are laid, and now, with some time now, they've become a rock layer themselves. This is solid rock. But the water coming down from the eruption actually carved out a little canyon. The water and the ice melted with the heat and came down and washed out that little canyon. So here you got rock layers and a canyon, and it was made all in a matter of a few months. So take a look at some of these layers in the Grand Canyon. Look at how rock can be one on top of the other. How in the world do you get such flat, gigantic deposits, one on top of the other? Some of these deposits are the size of a state. They're huge, some of them, and they're just flat, one on top of the other. Now understand that evolutionists would suggest to you that we're looking at millions of years here. You're looking at millions of years between some of these layers, like between that layer and between that layer and between that layer. This was the top of the ground for a while. But before that, this was a top, and then before that, this was a top. And the thing you don't see, with it being the top of the ground, you don't see like the features up top here, where these have been worn away by wind and rain and so on. You don't see any of that happening down here or down here or down here. Do you follow what I mean? When those were the tops of the ground. So what you see is an absence of time between the layers. It looks like they were laid down very quickly. And frankly, they have to be laid down quickly because how in the world do you get a gigantic, flat, anything like that? The water has to bring down it just basically, if I were to pour it on this table, I have to just take that mud and just flatten it out real quick and be fairly level by the time I come back with another bucket of mud and put it on top of that and let it flat. There's nothing going on in the world today that's making anything close to this. And I'm talking river deltas, you name it. Nothing like this is going on anywhere. So that tells you once again something happened in the past that's not going on now. Take a look at this. Where is this? Monument Valley, Utah-Arizona border area. And take a look at these things. It's a beautiful place, unbelievable place. I can see why it's called Monument Valley. But take a look. That used to be the top of the ground right there, right? So where did all this stuff go? And it's sure not down below. It's not even in the same zip code. So there's only one thing that can move that much material. We're talking cubic miles. That much material way far away. And that is water. Very agitated, very powerful, large amounts of water. And if those layers are still soft, that would be much easier to move than had it been already rock hard. Make sense? Incidentally, even evolutionists agree that something's going on here. You know, some kind of, we would call it a great drainage event. And incidentally, this is above the Grand Canyon in terms of upriver. So anyway. So really, when you're doing science, you always start with a question you want answered. And if it's a good question, you're likely to get a little better science done if it's a good question to start out with. Now, looking at the crust of the earth, we know water's been involved. So was it a lot of water over little time or a little water over much time? And that's really a very good question. That really addresses a lot of these issues. So it really depends upon how you are looking at the data, whether or not you are allowing for catastrophism as well as uniformitarianism. So, are you open to any interpretation? All right, class, we're back in school. What are the three basic types of rocks? Let's hear them. Come on, you remember. Igneous is what you meant. Igneous. Oh, but let's do the first one. Let's do sedimentary to start off with. Sedimentary, limestone, sandstone. Excuse me while I take a drink. Think of that rock as sediments from previous rock, or in other words, think of it this way. This is destroyed rock. Bits and pieces of other things reassembled, right? That's what sedimentary rock is. Did you know that salt is sedimentary rock? You're putting rock on your French fries. It's a good thing there's water-soluble rock, but it's, okay. Just thought you'd like to know that. Oh, here's a free one. You ready for a free one? This is a good one to have fun with. How do you get salt? What are the two elements you put together to get salt? Sodium and chlorine. Sodium is an explosive metal. If you were to swallow a piece, you would blow up. Chlorine is a highly toxic, deadly chemical. That's why you put it in your swimming pools, kill bugs, right? Jesus says you are the salt of the world. You are explosive, you are poisonous, but I'll still be able to put you together, do something with you. I don't know. I don't know, I just have fun with that. Okay, sedimentary rock. Igneous rock, which is, think of ignite, something was hot before and cooled down. Basalt is lava, okay? So lava becomes basalt. Metamorphic rock is the third, and it's the rarest, and it's one of the first two. It's been cooked into something else. Now, guess what? Sedimentary rock is most common. 3 out of 4 rocks. 75% of the world's rocks are sedimentary rock. Look at the Grand Canyon. That's all sedimentary rock. A little bit of lava. Now, excuse me again, I'll get another drink. Of all the science quotes I've shown you, this is forget all the others, this one. Keep this one. Stephen Jay Gould, for years, before he passed, I considered to be the Pope of evolution. Harvard biologist. He was on every PBS show, every show on television on evolution because he was articulate, he was funny, he'd give great quotes. He was just good. All right? Notice what he says about, this is just so good. The extreme rarity of transitional forms persists in the fossil record. In the fossil record persists as the trade secret of paleontology. What's a trade secret? What's a trade secret? Is it something that you go public with? Or is it something you just keep among your peers? Guys, we've got this issue, this problem. Don't go public with it. So he said, we've got a quiet problem amongst us paleontologists about the extreme rarity of transitional forms in the fossil record. The evolutionary trees that adorn our textbooks have data only at the tips and nodes of their branches. The rest is inference, not the evidence of fossils. What is he saying? Take a look at this tree. This is a trade secret. Think of where the fossils are found on this tree. See all these little green circles? That's where we find fossils. See all these red oval shapes? That's where we don't find fossils. In other words, we find lots of lemur fossils. We find lots of monkey fossils. We find lots of dinosaur fossils and bird fossils. We find horses. We find fish and so on. We find all those. We just don't find any pre-fish fossils. We don't find any pre-lemur fossils. We don't find anything along that line. You've heard of missing links? These are missing chains, okay? And, why do we even have billions of fossils? Well, you need water. Oh, this is a fossil I just acquired for my own collection. I just think it's great. Oh boy, a fish swallowing another fish at the time of being fossilized. Isn't that weird? Here a fish is getting covered up in mud and decides to tries to still swallow another nearby fish. That's how bad, how violent the world was at the time. But, okay, I'm going to move on quickly to the ark because I want to be able to answer some questions at the end. Just how big was the ark? And don't say big. Yeah, I've heard that enough. What did they use to measure for the measuring length? What was the standard? What? Cubits. What's a cubit? Oh, hold your arm out. Hold your arm out. Okay. From here to here is a cubit. There to there. Elbow to the fingertip. That's how they used to do it. And if you're an adult, it's going to be about 18 inches, 1.5 feet. So here's a question. Was Moses recording his cubit or Noah's cubit? Okay, I'll leave that to you to decide. But let's go with the conservative numbers of Moses' cubit, okay, 18 inches. It would have been 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, or 45 feet high, or roughly the size of the one in northern Kentucky. Have 3 decks, 1.5 million cubic feet capacity. If you were to use modern train cars, how many would that take to fill? It would take actually 522. That's a lot of capacity. So there was a lot of room in the flood, into the ark. Pairs of all creatures that have the breath of life then came into Noah and entered the ark. So all the animals, and you might say, wait a minute now, that can't be species. We got million species today. There's no way it could go in at the species level. And you're absolutely right, no way. So what was it? If you know the way they classify animals generally, up to family. I heard a really good talk by a biologist at a creation conference, a biologist professor from Southern Adventist University, and he was talking how the evidence was showing that it could have been at a family level. In other words, 2 wolves for all the dogs we have today, foxes and hyenas and everything, and 2 cats for the big cats and little cats. Now, I've got something that absolutely can support his theory. Here's my story. I was doing a week of prayer in Coos Bay, Oregon, and I had the afternoon to myself. I was driving around just taking in the sights. I was driving down toward Bandon, which is on the coast. As I'm driving that way through some forest and everything, you're driving, and there's a sign that says petting zoo ahead. And I thought, petting zoo, what's it going to be? Goats? What? Ma and pa kind of thing. So I'm driving, and then I'm looking at another sign. It says, largest petting zoo in North America. Okay. Go a little further, lions and tigers. Whoa, okay, I'm just pulling in over here. So I got out and went in there and didn't pet any lions or tigers, although they had plenty of them there on display. And I mean with just glass, and you're like, this close? Anyway, pretty interesting. But they did have some baby animals there, and I got to hold a little red fox pup. Little baby right there. That was pretty cool. And a possum was stuck in somebody's woolen cap. And that was pretty cool. A lynx, a bear cub, that was all cool. But what they had, the star of the show, was a snow leopard, a young snow leopard. Unfortunately, the trainer who was behind a little barricade, and he had the snow leopard there, said, I'm sorry, the snow leopard just 1 week ago turned 1 year old. By federal law, I'm not allowed to let you touch it now. And we're like, hi, why didn't we come a week earlier? But anyway, so he was demonstrating what this snow leopard had, that long tail, fluffy, long, gorgeous tail. The trainer had a long stick with a string, a ball, and feathers, a toy, and was playing with this leopard. And he would bounce this ball all around on the wall and around the floor and everywhere. And this leopard was chasing it like a kitten. And I said, that is a cat. That's a kitty cat. I've owned kitty cats. It's got the same DNA as my little kitty cat has, because that's what my cat would do. I'm a cat person. Cats have staff. Dogs have masters and cats have staff. Okay, you know that. Anyway, so I totally got what this professor was saying, that maybe 2 cats. I got another theory that you can't disprove, so it's a pretty good one. Take a look at the people coming off of the ark. Noah's grandson, one of his grandsons, was named Cush. Cush in Hebrew means black, or like African, Cushites. The rest of the Old Testament, Cushites are Africans. So you have this African race, or sub-race, or whatever you want to call it, part of the human race, coming out in 2 generations. So there's that much quick variety in the genetics, and the strength of the genetics. So the races are already coming out that quickly. So, and yet you only had 8 people. And they lived 900 years, and their genetics must have been, the health and the vigor, the power. When God says fill the earth, replenish the earth, he might have been saying more than just by sheer numbers. He might say with varieties and everything too. If that's a case of people, maybe the animals were that way too. Maybe pre-flood animals likewise were healthy. We know a lot of them were larger than they are now. Maybe they just had a health and a vitality in which they could just make a wide variety of kids. I'm a birder. Sorry, out of the closet, here we go. I'm a birder, and I love to look at birds. My wife and I, it's the thing we love to do when we go places. We look for birds. We got our binoculars, off we go. Recently, Arizona, looking at hummingbirds, especially down there. Hummingbirds are hummingbirds. They've got different colors, a little different size, not much. But they're the same birds with a little bit of variation. It's easy to imagine that there were a common ancestor to hummingbirds. Woodpeckers. Have you ever seen a hairy woodpecker and a downy woodpecker? A hairy woodpecker is a downy woodpecker that's been stretched, or the hairy woodpecker got pushed into a downy woodpecker. Squished. They're the same bird, just a different size. Different species, but the same bird. So I think at a different, how many woodpeckers do you need? How many raptors do you need to provide all the DNA? So I kind of think that something like the humans was exhibited with the animals. I asked the professor, how many pairs do you think would be required? Oh, he thinks maybe 700-800 pairs. I thought, that little. So anyway, that's what he said. And I have no reason to doubt him that, but you know what? Let's take up the number to as much as 1,600, and it could have been genera. The Hebrew word is baramin, and that means kinds. They went in by kinds. We don't know what that means scientifically. So 16, let's say 8,000 pairs, 1,600 animals, plus a year's provision got on the ark. You know what that would still leave? Over half of the ark empty. Now, I've asked various groups, what do you think the extra room was for? And I've gotten the following answers. Poop. Maybe they're making babies. They were thinking of all these different kinds of answers. But the kids are the ones in our schools that usually get the right answer. Kids get the answer quicker. They say there was room for more people. I think that's a pretty good answer. God was hoping more people might have gotten on the ark. Anyway, so I've told you about this one. I'm going to pass by the scoffers scoffing about this, and then I'm going to skip this because I usually show this apart from the sermon. And that, but there was one other thing, wasn't there? Come on now. Oh. Yeah, population size. Okay, there's a quote from a population experts that are evolutionists say something happened into our genetic pools because we should have more people living today. If we came out of Africa 1 to 2 million years ago, like the current thought is, we should have several times the number of people we have here. And so they were guessing there had to be some kind of catastrophe in the past. Something took out the human population, got it down to a very small number before it and these are just trying to figure this out. So I was thinking, oh yeah, we got down to about 8 people and started over again. So it's pretty simple. But take a look at this, and I'm going to close with this because this is a wonderful place to close. Jesus said this, for as it was in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark and did not know until the flood came and took them all away. So also will the coming of the Son of Man be. Jesus obviously thought that the flood happened and uses it as an example of what it's going to be like in his day when he comes back. One of these days, this world is going to be baptized with fire. Already been done with water. John the Baptist said, I baptize you with water. That's a temporary cleaner. Fire is more permanent. There's somebody coming after me that's going to use fire. Global warming. Going to use fire in a serious way. And using these words of Jesus, that means that's telling me the day is going to come when the Seattle Mariners are going to be having a day game. Somebody in Washington, D.C. will say something that got everybody riled up. Hollywood, there will be some breakup in a marriage, and that's got, people just aghast. Some terrorist attack will take place in the Middle East. And Jesus will come. Amen. And catch most of the world off guard. Why do I go and do these talks? This is why I do these talks. I could retire, but I don't want to do that. So I want to make sure everybody possibly that I can come in contact with can be ready as they can be for this day. I want all of you to be ready. You going to be ready? Going to be ready? Yes. Come on, you're raise a hand in church. It works. You're going to be ready. Be ready. There's nothing more important. There's nothing more important. You have to have your spiritual bags packed, your ticket punched. You got to be ready to go because the day is coming as sure as the flood came and as sure as solid as the evidence is that happened. God is going to step into man's history again, and this time it'll be with fire. As far as I'm concerned, let's go. When I'm weird because when people talk, oh man, the country's messed up and the world is messed up and oh my goodness, look at all the things, I'm going, yeah, that makes us that much closer. Is that a weird attitude? I'm sorry. But as far as I'm concerned, there's no government that's a savior. There's no scientific approach to saving the world for whatever kind of things to recycle or whatever, as good as that is, it's not going to save the planet. There's only one Savior of this planet, and he's coming pretty soon. And I want to be ready. Please join me. Heavenly Father, thank you for a chance to talk about the flood. The historicity of the flood is very clear. These ancient memories from every corner of the world remembers a time when water came and did destroy the world. The evidence of the rocks, the rocks are crying out with evidence. We thank you, Lord, that we have a written record of what happened and why. More importantly, we know that that is a predictor of a future event. Jesus used it to try to rouse a sleepy world, a messed up world, to be ready. Help us to share that word of warning to the world, that his hour of judgment has come and he's coming soon. And may, by our words, our actions, our examples, that we can encourage others to be ready to get into the spiritual ark that is Jesus. Thank you for these things in his name. Amen.